So before we start this video, I did just want to kind of address a few things that I had seen in the comments of my previous video regarding Jimmy Snow. I don't want anyone to think that I'm not reading what they're saying or taking into account their perspectives on the situation. In fact, the whole reason that I am making this video is to address a lot of the concerns that I had been finding out after I posted my second video. I will have that video linked in the pinned comment on this video, and also my description box. So if you want to watch that video before coming here, great. If you feel like you can skip that, that's great too. So yeah, I was messaged by someone on Instagram who felt like some of the comments that I had made were hurtful to them, and they felt like my perspective wasn't taking into consideration a lot of the more serious allegations that were being made against Jimmy at the time. It is something that Jimmy talks about for a moment in his video, but definitely does not go into the length that you would think that a situation like this deserves. And in fact, I am now sort of the argument that Jimmy shouldn't come back to this platform unless it's to make a video addressing these allegations. I really legitimately didn't understand the situation fully before I decided to comment on that. And if I had known about these other things that were going on, I definitely would have talked about it. And I am making this video now to state that what Jimmy is doing and, what people are saying that he has done is not right. It's not okay. And that the video that we got really doesn't do it justice, even though it was a very thorough and very long-winded video. The amount of time that he has spent on this particular situation is pretty lackluster, and he definitely did not talk about it in the way that I think people are really wanting him to talk about it. I know a lot of people feel hurt because of how well received Jimmy's video ended up being for him. I hate to think that I contributed to that, that feeling for someone to when they see see someone who has done wrong to them being praised. That's an ugly feeling, and I hate to think that I have possibly given someone out there that feeling. I am someone who believes victims, or believes people when they share these kinds of vulnerable experiences. I'm always going to take those words on good faith. As someone who has experienced abusive relationships, power imbalance, relationships where there is a power imbalance, or just an unhealthy dynamic. Remember what it felt like when nobody believed me. So I do tend to believe, right? Unless I have a very good reason to otherwise not, then I am going to believe these people as they're coming forward. And even though it is hard to accept that about a creator that I have followed and loved their content from for a very long time, I obviously had an eye-opening experience. And I just wanted to say again that I really appreciate you allowing me to have a space to be misinformed, or to have an underdeveloped opinion, or just thank you. That being said, a lot of things have happened in the last while, and we're going to talk about that. We are also going to be talking about, in real life, game over. If that is also something that is sensitive to you, then I would ask you to, think of yourself first. Don't watch this video. I have other videos that you can watch, so feel free. And yeah, we are just gonna get into this video as best as I can.
Can I get your name and where you're from, if you don't mind?
I'm Kai.
Kai, can I get spelling for you?
Straight out of Dogtown, K-A-I.
Hola, chulas. So, a lot has happened. I don't know exactly when this happened, but Jimmy Snow is actually now in the hospital because he is having a lot of not alive ideations, and as one should. If you are aware that you are having those feelings, the safe and appropriate thing to do is immediately seek medical attention. And I have some interesting feelings about that, given the new perspective that I have on the Jimmy Snow situation. Now that I have taken in a lot of people's experiences and done a lot of reading, mostly on the subreddit, which is now privated. It was freely talk about Jimmy or something. Yeah, r/freely talk about Jimmy or something like that. But I went back to that page earlier today just to continue doing some research for this video. And it was privated, no longer able to join. So in my mind, that would suggest that one of the moderators or something like made it private, or it got banned or something, or something happened. And so as I was reading in another subreddit, just more so talking about like fundies and different skeptics in this community, I saw the post Jimmy was in the hospital for this. And obviously in his video he had expressed having all this whole situation is taking a toll on his mental health. Well, I certainly think that it would take a toll on my mental health as well if I was out and about doing all of these things that Jimmy is so obviously doing with a number of fans. And again, these are allegations, but pretty hard, when you're looking at people's conversations with Jimmy and how he was pretty blatantly sexual pretty immediately with a lot of different people, without trying to have any sort of relationship or any sort of build up to that. Like, not only does that come across like really thirsty, but at the same time, like, it's just not exactly the greatest look for a creator to be interacting with his fans in that way. And one thing that I had one perspective that I had not even really considered, that I actually do feel pretty specifically irritated about, is that the content that Jimmy used to make is like atheist, ex-Mormon content. And when you are leaving a religious group, especially one like the Mormons, where it's a little bit more high control, and that tends to be like the whole center of your social life, like your home life, like that's all you know. It's designed in such a way to keep you in. We could talk about it for hours, but when you're coming out of something like that, you tend to be pretty fucking vulnerable. And so it's just not hard to imagine that there is someone out there who was feeling lost or lonely or directionless, like they had lost their whole structure, their whole way of being for their whole life, because they no longer believe or subscribe to this like set of ideas that don't make sense to them anymore. That's a pretty hard place to be in. And to have a creator that you look up to, that you are learning from, that you see in a position of an educator almost, or an ally, a self-proclaimed ally, never mind you, you might be a lot more susceptible and a lot more vulnerable and a lot more influenced by that person. So for him to be having these blatantly sexual conversations, knowing that there is that power dynamic in place, kind of just seems wrong, right? Like, that doesn't seem right. And I wasn't necessarily paying too close attention because it wasn't something that I was super familiar with. And in fact, I believed him to be discussing his partner, because I know that he had said that he had met his partner on Tinder. They knew who he was before they started talking, and that's fine. Like, I mean, Jimmy's a sizable creator, and that's gonna happen sometimes, and if you can approach that appropriately, and he said that he accounted for it, but what about all those other times that you didn't account for it? You know, what about all those other people that never became a partner to you, but you still built relationships with and probably still had like intimate interactions with? Did you account for it any of those times? The thing that is really interesting to me about a lot of this is that, you know, now it's like, it's kind of like when you watch a really shitty Lifetime movie and there's a person that is like supposed to be suspicious, but maybe they don't always see it right away. But like the movie is like giving you clues throughout, and then at the end you like see it, and they like do like a flashback of all the other times that he was being suspicious, but you didn't know that he was being suspicious. Do you know what I'm talking about? That's what this feels like. Looking back on it now with like this new perspective, with this new context, and the information that I have now, that these conversations were taking place with people who were a lot of the time willing, but sometimes not, and feeling like there was that awkward dynamic. Like, it doesn't necessarily even have to be that there was something like predatory happening. And I think the group that was on Reddit was pretty out loud that they weren't necessarily trying to call him a predator or trying to label him as that, but they were saying that he was definitely being shady. And definitely had things that he needed to talk about, and things that he needed to improve on even still. And so in this video, he talks about it like as if it's a thing of the past, as if it's not something that he has to worry about anymore, because now he has a fabulous partner and he's so happy, and even, God forbid, right? He's really banking on that relationship to last. And I tend to believe that, right? Like, I don't think that that's, yeah. But it'd just be so interesting if a whole bunch of people who are not your partner, who did not have this curated experience of you, wouldn't it just be so unfortunate if a bunch of those people started talking to each other about their different experiences, enough so that it looks like there becomes a pattern? You know, a lot of time where there's smoke, there is a fire, and there's gonna be someone out there who has an experience so messed up or so much whatever that it makes Jimmy start to panic inside, and he thinks, I need to get in front of this situation before it becomes more, right? Like, doesn't that seem like, these behaviors, these videos seem like the actions of someone who kind of had a feeling that something was going to happen, kind of had to know somewhere deep down inside that if enough people started talking to each other, that eventually it would start to become a problem. And yeah, that's where we find ourselves today. There are a lot of really scary real world consequences that are happening. And I want to make it absolutely clear that nothing I'm saying today is in any way meant to discredit or diminish the real feelings that I'm certain Jimmy is having. I have also experienced feelings of wanting to not be alive, and I would never want to invalidate that for someone, right? Like, that is not something that you mess with. It's not something that you downplay. I'm just curious about, you know, everything leading up to this, right? Like, why did this happen? And ultimately, this happened because Jimmy got involved in a situation that he had no business to be involved in. Just like he was getting involved with people that he really had no business to be involved with. Is it so much so that when people get a little bit of power, like, it corrupts them? Or is it that, like, bad people just tend to be in positions of power? I don't understand. I don't know, it's just a phenomenon that I'm having a lot of issues with recently, because I'm talking about, you know, creators and everything, and I have to think, like, were they like this before they were famous? Were they like this before they were influential and powerful and had a lot of money and followers and stuff? Is it something about that makes people that way, that they feel like they can just do whatever they want now? because there are multiple things happening at this time. People much more famous, much more influential than Jimmy Snow, right? Like, being called out for really horrendous and awful, horrible things. The impact that celebrities or influencers or creators have on their audience is absolutely there. It's palpable. I know that because I myself have been influenced by creators on this platform. And that's why I'm here talking about anything. That's why I have a YouTube channel, is because I was influenced by creators that I was following on this platform. So to say that, like, just because, you don't think that you're a big creator, or you don't think that you mean anything to anyone else, doesn't negate the real power and the real influence that you really have. And just because you don't see it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. It's just so typical, right? Like, it's just so what, like, par for the course anymore. Like, if someone is high up, they're probably doing something bad, and I just think that I don't know, like, I'm kind of jaded on a lot of people, on a lot of things now, I think, after this. Like, even someone, who like fronts so much about being an ally and about being a feminist and being a supporter of women and all these sort of things, those dudes are like always the dudes that you have to be wary of, and I don't necessarily know why that is. It's like when someone consistently calls themselves an empathetic person, but then they act like completely the opposite of anyone who's ever experienced empathy would do, Yeah, it's like one of those things. Like, it's a very performative thing to, like, constantly be announcing that. And it's just so hilarious that a lot of these dudes are always the ones getting caught up for the shit like this. Like, it's really kind of gross to think about, because I've been in that vulnerable place where I didn't know who was gonna be in my life still, after deciding that I no longer believed the way that I was taught to believe my whole life. That's a really scary place to be, and a lot of times it's a dangerous place to be. Sometimes people are ending up homeless on the street because their family kicks them out of their home over stupid shit like this. So to think that there are people who are following Jimmy because they have that connection, like the one externality that may or may not exist, right? Like, people are coming to his platform because they have things that they want to unload, or baggage that they want to toxic things that they want to unlearn, and they're putting him in a position of an educational position, an ally, someone who is actively working in this community, someone who put themselves in that position, by the way. And that person starts to pay a little attention to you, and that makes you feel real special, right? And you have no idea about any of the other people that he's doing that with. And even if it makes you uncomfortable, you still might go through with it because you're a big fan, and probably super, super duper excited that they're giving you any attention, right? And wouldn't it just be a shame? Wouldn't it just be a shame if, you were also in a position where you were super vulnerable and might need someone to talk to, someone who understands, someone who knows what it's like on the other side of things, right? Trash. It is a pretty clear and blatant abuse of power, and it's just shameful. It's absolutely shameful, especially to come from someone who, like I said, put themselves in that position. It's just not a good look. I wish that Jimmy gets well. I know there was some other drama with another creator on this platform who is also in the skeptic community, and people were threatening to dox him and his wife, and that's also not a good look. I would strongly advise against things like that. Because, yeah, as corny as it is, and as many times as I feel like I've said it, we are all all human beings with thoughts and feelings and emotions on the other side of the screen. And we all need to be mindful of that when we're talking about each other, talking to each other. But at the same time, if you're out and about and doing a lot of things, not even just this thing, there are many scandals that Jimmy has been involved in, apparently, could have fooled me. It's just so interesting, you know, to go back and like watch videos of him and to hear certain comments that he would make about, you know, the physical attractiveness of other women and just, you know, different overtly sexual things, or how he says he's like an incredibly, he wants, like, Jimmy definitely wanted us to know that he was a very sexual person, which I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. That I never really understood also how that would all fit into what we were talking about in the first place. There's a lot of fair and valid criticism about Jimmy Snow out there. I don't think that he deserves to be feeling the extent, you know, to the extent that Jimmy is feeling the things he is feeling. I don't think that anyone deserves to feel that way. And I do hope that he starts to feel better and is able to move on from this. But at the same time, maybe it's just not it anymore. It's just clear that he can't handle the power or the influence or the whatever. He doesn't know how to behave with it. And now that all of this is coming back in his face, it has brought him so far down that this is where we are now. And that's really unfortunate. But also, what else is there to be said? You know, if this is really, if that's how it really is, then maybe it's time to log off and do something else and live a different life now. Particularly a life where you are not able to, you know, overstep other people's boundaries and involve people in conversations that they weren't really trying to be involved in, but feel obligated to because you happen to be a really large creator. Yeah. I am someone who is very open to criticism because I don't know how to get better unless someone tells me that I'm doing something wrong. And so I pretty quickly, like within the first hour of that video, I was already researching all the reasons why what I just said was maybe not exactly 100% the full picture. And I'm willing to admit that I often wear rose-colored glasses. Definitely a very optimistic person, and I like to see the best. I try very hard to see the best in most people, because I would want someone to try to see the best in me, right? Like I know that I have things that I need to work on, and I hear things that other creators do, and I can't imagine that is something that I would ever do. Like I wouldn't just assume that someone wants to have a sexual conversation with me because I'm their favorite creator. Depends on what kind of things I am creating, but certainly something like atheist YouTube content, I probably would want to make sure, double check before, at least like every time, like pretty much every time I talk to someone different. I would confirm that they wanted to engage in that kind of conversation, but that's just me. I don't know. Like I said, I've never been in that position before, so who knows. I'm also just not the type of person to try to force things on someone that doesn't want that and then immediately block them afterwards. It's just not behavior I can say I've ever engaged in, so but yeah, definitely feel out of my element to be talking about something like this, or to have even been approached by someone who felt like I had upset them like that. Really threw me off guard, and I tried to do my best to address it the way that the best way that I knew how to, which was just, you know, to be like, I think, understanding or willing to accept that I had done something that had hurt someone else. And I think like that's a good place to start, is at least being able to recognize like when you are in the wrong. Is something that I'm always trying to work on, always trying to not just see my, not just like see every decision I make as the absolute right, best decision just because I made it. Yeah. When I turned on my camera to record that first video, I definitely never imagined that I would read that he was gonna end up in the hospital after all of this. Like, I feel like a lot of people, just based off of what I was reading, a lot of people have felt some kind of way about Jimmy for a long time, and nobody necessarily expected that the straw that would break the camel's back was Gabby Hanna's poetry book. But, God works in mysterious ways, or something like that, and I don't know. It's just a situation, man. And ultimately, what I have learned about this is that very much so, very much more than I probably was really aware of. Maybe because I'm stupid or something, I don't know. Was that, the internet very clearly, obviously, has real world consequences, and the way that we behave and interact on the internet is no longer just removed from our everyday lives, right? Like, I feel like the internet is so much a part of our day-to-day lives that, if anything, the internet you should hold it more consequentially, because it exists forever. Like, it just is forever, and that is a terrifying thought. I think everyone is a process, right? And everyone's on their own timeline. And what I would like to think could happen, again, and this is my optimism, is that, I would hope that as people get older, they also want to be better or learn more about themselves, or, evolve as a person, right? That's what I like to think that everyone else is doing too. It's not always the case. Some people go their whole lives without being self-aware. And it's very unfortunate that a lot of those people also tend to be some of the most influential. That is just my thought, just my opinion. And of course, everything that we're talking about is allegation. And I am in no position to say who Jimmy is really on the inside, or what his true motives are. But I think a lot of people are rightfully upset with him, because it was a pretty blatant misuse of his power and his position, something that he's always condemning other people for. And it's just really, really, really unfortunate. If you like this video, then you can absolutely leave it a like. And if you like me, then you can subscribe to this channel, where I will be putting out more videos talking about whatever I want, whenever I want, because this is my channel. And that's what we do here. So, subscribe. And as always, I hope that you have a beautiful, wonderful, amazing rest of your day, Chulas.